Western Europe, the second week of May 1917. Bullets have been flying left and right in a major effort to repulse various German attacks. The Allies have continued to gain ground in the eastern fronts of France and throughout Belgium. The constant movement of the British and the Germans during this week will have a vital impact on how the territory of eastern France and the Belgian fronts are controlled. New forms of attack from the British, and also the repulse of Germany's offense, will shape the outcome of this week. If at this point in time, you're thinking that it will be hard for the German or Russian armies to prevail and move forward across enemy lines, you'll be surprised as to how this war plays out in the week ahead. A series of events along the eastern fronts of Europe will determine which countries will end up being the stronger forces by the end of this week. Last week in the Great War, the Russian provisional government secured a narrow vote of confidence. While the Russians were focused on that political event, the British were focused on the southern region, where there was a smaller battle between Britain and Bulgaria to fight for more land in the Balkan regions. Towards the beginning of 1917, countries such as Britain or France could have predicted that the fighting would die down as talks of peace treaties began to buzz. But as Germany kept mobilizing their front lines towards Belgium and France during the final days of the Bullecourt battle, the Allies, especially Britain, knew that they had to take timely measures. It was during this week that the British completed full capture of Bullecourt. The battle was vital at the time for Britain and France to gain more control of the Belgian borders along France and Germany. The German trench system along the front lines near Bullecourt were heavily attacked by the British, and it was there that the Germans could no longer fight. They retreated, and the battle ended with the British gaining more ground. While after over 5 weeks of fighting, the British had only advanced between 1 and 10 kilometers on a front of over 20 kilometers. But don't let this battle on land fool you into thinking that the British were on their way to having the upper hand against the German and Austrian military. They had plenty of problems of their own, many at sea. During this week alone, there were over 15 attacks on the Allies' U-boats and carriers. These ongoing naval attacks coming from Germany and Austria resulted in thousands of prisoners and hundreds of men left dead. German and Austrian naval bombardment continued, especially near the waters around France and Belgium. So while the British and French might have been successful in gaining control on land, their navy was progressively struggling. The battles on land and water weren't the only places where struggling was occurring. The Russians had problems of a political and strategic nature. Their military leadership was drastically changing at the time. It all started with the leaders of the provisional government in Russia attending a conference held in the nation's capital. There was applause as Russia announced that they would fight to the finish of this war and would repudiate any talks of peace coming from Germany or Austria-Hungary. This gave Russia a boost of confidence as it allowed them to look as aggressive as possible towards the Germans. However, just 2 days later, General Kornilov, Commandant of Petrograd, and M. Guchov, Minister of Marine and War, both resigned. The absence of critical leaders made it difficult for Russia to deal with and halted their front lines from advancing. By the end of this week, let's take a look at where things stand. German resistance was fierce, but when their offensive attack on the British in France and Belgium was called off on May 17th, few of the initial objectives had been met. The Australians helped the British to become in possession of much of the German trench system between Bullecourt and Reid-les-Cognicourt, but had been unable to capture Hendecourt. To the west, British troops managed to push the Germans out of Bullecourt, but incurred considerable losses, failing also to advance northeast to Hendecourt. And the Russians were stuck in the unpleasant position of having received word that the German Chancellor was open to a peace treaty, which helped the tension reside towards the borders of Germany and Russia. In short, it was a week of unpredictable outcomes for the key players in the war, on land, on sea, and in the great halls where leaders' vision for their country can be made or broken.